As we are recording this podcast, breaking news coming out of Toronto that Mike Babcock has been relieved of his coaching duties. Huge announcement as the Leafs have been struggling. They've lost 6 in a row. The rumors have been swirling. Mike, not surprising, I guess, but what do you make of this big news?
Everybody goes through it. It's a little humble pie for Mike Babcock, or a lot of humble pie. He's made his money. I don't think anybody's going to feel bad about where he's going to wind up next, or if he decides to just not coach anymore. I mean, he's a multimillionaire, but on the other side of the coin, his legacy takes a bit of a hit here. He was supposed to be the answer to what ailed the Toronto Maple Leafs when he came to the Toronto organization. That's failed to materialize. I know the feeling. I mean, I went to Long Island after 2 great seasons of coaching in Boston. Thought I could make a difference, and personnel problems were too big to overcome, and I felt like an idiot. And I'm sure he feels a little bit smaller than he did going into today. I mean, we talked about him having, confidence in his own ability. But what's interesting to me about this announcement is it came from Brendan Shanahan. It didn't come from the general manager, who I think is probably shielded right now by Brendan Shanahan. I guess Shanahan was the guy that basically hired Babcock, correct?
Yeah, he was really involved in that.
So he had to take I guess he had to take the bullet, and Lou Lamoriello was there at the time, I think. So maybe that was the right way to go about it, but I think there was some shielding done of Dubas by Shanahan. And so now in comes Sheldon Keefe and gets some kind of a kick at the can with a general manager who apparently they're pretty tight with. We'll see what happens, but it's I've always had a lot of respect for Babcock. I mean, he's won in a lot of different places, but let's face it,
couldn't get
Toronto,
this team going.
Toronto swallows another good guy.
Yeah, and he hasn't won a playoff series since 2013, I believe, Jonesy. He's got a couple years left on this deal, though, too. It's an 8-year deal. 3 years still remaining, so the Leafs are taking a hit financially as well.
Yeah, well, they've got the money.
They do.
That was never going to be the issue there. The issue would be whether or not he could relate his coaching style to the younger superstar talents that are in Toronto right now. In Detroit, he had veteran players that he seemed to really connect with and put in positions to win games. That worked well for him there. It worked well for him with the Olympics. I think he does a very good job in managing a team that's got maybe players that are in situations where they're further along in their careers, and just didn't seem to get the Maple Leafs to the point that I think we all expected them to get to. Even last year in the playoffs against the Boston Bruins, they had the Bruins where they wanted them. They should have won that series, and they didn't. And the Bruins' maturity and the Bruins' star players and leadership and coaching staff, for that matter, found a way for the Bruins to beat that Leaf team. And I think that has a lot to do with why he's been fired at the start of this year. It was an important start for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And clearly, he couldn't afford a 6-game losing streak at this point. He's without Mitch Marner over the last little while here, too. So you have to think that Kyle Dubas was thinking about this a long time. And finally, that window opened up where he could make a change, get his guy in there, and Sheldon Keefe from the minors, who they have a great relationship. Maybe he's a little more analytical behind the bench. Maybe it's an old school versus new school type situation. But Kyle Dubas has now got his guy, and now all eyes will be on Kyle Dubas. Yeah, this has to work for him.
It kind of reminds you of what happened in Chicago last year. You fire a legend in Joel Quenneville, one of the greatest coaches to ever coach this game, and you bring in your coach from the minor league team for the Chicago Blackhawks and Jeremy Colleton. But, you have to look at this, too, and wonder, Mike, how much pressure in the market? I mean, Toronto's the biggest hotbed for hockey in Canada, and this is the team that is the iconic Toronto Maple Leafs, and there's a lot of pressure on their general manager to get this figured out.
There is, and it has eaten up a lot of other good people. I mean, Brian Burke as a manager was supposed to be the guy that turned it around. It didn't work for him, and, you had Randy Carlyle was given a chance. Ron Wilson had a great reputation going into coach, and now Mike Babcock. So the list of casualties is long. Seems like they have the forwards to get the job done. Maybe not enough on the blue line. Goaltending, I'm not 100%.
The starter's very good. They don't have any support for him, though, so they have to play Frederik Andersen a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no trust in a backup goalie, which is the system that every team's employing now. the two goaltender
Do you think they're much better than their record indicates?
Yeah, I do. I think they're a better team than I think they can be one of the more exciting teams to watch.
What do you think's happened there? Do you think Babcock and Matthews were on the same page? Didn't look like it.
I think that this comes down to the players not performing for the head coach. And I think
is a big problem.
Yeah, and I think that's why he's been fired. So,
and is that an indictment on the players or on the coach?
It's a bit of both, but the players are young. I mean, the star players in Toronto are young players. So you've got to find a way to relate to them and be able to push the right buttons and put them in positions where they're not looking.
It's different now, right? It's a lot different now when you got a guy like Nylander holds out to almost Christmas time and he hits the lottery.
Yep.
Matthews gets paid. Marner gets paid. Everybody gets paid, whether they suck or not. Mm-hmm. Even Jonesy.
Not enough. Not for this.
But Jonesy, you've said, we've had this conversation, and you said if I was making $10 million at the age of 22 back in the day, I wouldn't have wanted to coach me. I mean, there's a different sense of mentality with these players these days with the amount of money they're making.
It's a big challenge.
Yeah, that can
And when
be tough.
you've been with them for an extended period of time, and believe me, he had enough time to get this team to the next level. That was 5 years that he's been, or 4.5, whatever it is. He's got, I believe, almost 3 years left on his contract. So that is enough time to figure it out. And in the time that he was being recruited by Buffalo, at the same time as he took the Toronto job, Buffalo's already gone through 3 head coaches. And you could argue both teams are in similar situations. I mean, they both have young superstar talent. Eichel and Matthews would be the two most comparables. So it is interesting to see how long the rope was, and understandable because of his past resume for Babcock. But this was a situation that, when it happened today, it shocked me. Even though everything was swirling around, I did not think it would happen during the season this year because of everything that Mike Babcock had done. What it tells me is the players had had enough of Mike Babcock. And the players had enough say and enough guys speaking that it ultimately cost Mike Babcock his job. And that's dangerous.
Yeah.
That's as dangerous as it gets. But those players, the next game and the next week, you watch them the next week, and if they're flying out there and playing up to their capabilities again, then it'll be the players that had this. And the players are ultimately the reason that Mike Babcock was fired. They should feel responsible for it, and maybe they feel good about it. That's going to be, they're not going to say it.
It'll be very telling.
They'll tell them how they play.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to watch.
But if they do turn it around, maybe you give the new coach some credit, but that does point a finger at Mike Babcock, that he wasn't able to motivate them in the right way, but it also points a finger at the players because they acted like overpaid, spoiled brats.
But
right?
what choice do you have, though? If you're Brendan Shanahan and you're looking at the one advantage having Brendan Shanahan around is he's won cups. He was an awesome player, Hall of Fame talent. He understands the locker room. I mean, he's got all of those elements. So this didn't happen overnight in his eyes. And you can believe it. He had a lot to do with this. And I think he had the utmost respect for Mike Babcock when he was hired in Toronto, and had a lot to do with him being hired there. This wouldn't be an easy decision for him. And I do think Kyle Dubas has some say in this, but I think Brendan Shanahan kind of speaks volumes that he was the one who made the announcement.